Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Can pass that in sheet for you to sign. Sorry. So we are, I think last week we were starting to discuss about Atma, and that is, and we had Amaraji summarize the lesson on Atma, that's page 75. I'll uh, hang on for a minute, I'll get you a book. And sorry, I'll be back in a minute. So we were talking about what is Atma, and that led a lot of discussion, um, and talking about the science behind Atma too. Executive summary of that. Sorry? Executive summary of that. Oh, you missed it? I missed the last class. Okay. I don't know if I can do it. All the adjectives. Yeah. So what we started off with actually is we started to ask the question, what does God mean? And people had different attributes that they associated God with. I think omniscience was one of them, and then we had no start, no end. We and what else is there? Right? So we had all the notes, the words. Um,
What we discussed was like the word that you're omniscient, formless, immortal, all-knowing, narrator, teacher, and the word that the book uses, Satchinanda. Satchinanda.
yeah, Satchidanand will come to that. So those are all the different words that we actually associate when you say about when you say properties of God. Forget about the idols and the pujas and all those things. When we say God, these are the attributes of God. And some of the other terms is that they use is somebody who is faultless. Uh, Faultless. So one who has no faults. And here we started digressing a little bit from the textbook and getting more and more in detail about the three different doctrines of Sanatana Dharma, which we talked about, Advaita, Vashishta Advaita, and Dvaita philosophies. We talked about it. And we also hinted on the subtle difference between how the God is defined in these three different philosophies. When I say God, I'm going to use the word God not in the metaphorical sense of the idols and Rama, Krishna, and all those different Shiva, Brahma, Parvati. I'm not going to worry about those names. Those are all characters of an example plot of stories that we came up with. Uh, but we're talking about the true God. When I say God, the different names for God is Om. We call them Brahman, not Brahma. Aren't we confused with Brahma, Brahman, and Atma. Then even Atma, we have subtle difference between Jivatma and Paramatma and all those things that are there. So these are all the words that are associated with God. Uh, and uh, so with that one, we started looking at that one. So the big difference we saw, at least between the two philosophies, in Advaita philosophy, which was fully propagated and promoted by Adi Shankara. Again, keep in mind, he promoted it. He was the founder. He was not the founder of Advaita philosophy. He's just a promoter of Advaita philosophy. Uh, his biggest thing was he said that Jivatma and Paramatma are the same. Jivatma is what we have as soul, and Paramatma is divine. They are both are the same. Was his biggest thing. That is not the main crux of his belief in Advaita philosophy. In Advaita philosophy, he believed in what is called the Shunyavada. That is, everything is zero. That is basically there's nothing. Everything is nothing, is what his main attribute was. And then, of course, the question then comes is, we didn't go into this last time, but I'm saying it now. The question is then we're experiencing everything here. So what is this? Then he says that is called Maya. And we'll talk about this in an entire chapter later on. There's an entire chapter on Maya later on. We'll come to that at that point of time. This is Adi Shankara's doctrine in philosophy. And this was based on his literary reading of three major scriptures that he read, and he took the summary of these three scriptures. Basically, the Bhagavad Gita is one of them. Then you have the Brahma Sutra is the other one, and then of course the third one is the Upanishads. So these are the three readings that he had, and he come to a solid justification behind his rationale. Ramanuja was a subsequent one. The Adi Shankara was the 20th person to read and comment on Brahma Sutra. The 21st who wanted to comment on it was Ramanuja. Ramanuja's reading and interpretation was slightly different. He saw that as Jivatma and Paramatma are not the same, but they are similar. And he came up with this Vashishta Advaita philosophy. And the 22nd person to read the Bhagavad Sutra is Madhvacharya, who came up with the Dvaita philosophy. He basically said that Jivatma and Paramatma are two distinct ones. They are not comparable. They're not the same. And so if you have aspirations of reaching divinity, forget the whole thing. You stay where you are. That was his basic philosophy. You be happy where you are. Of course, there are many, many people who read or interpreted the Brahma Sutra much after these people too. So there's about 8 other people who interpreted Brahma Sutra after Madhvacharya. So keep in mind, these are the 3 biggest doctrines. Doesn't mean these are the only ones. There are many, many different doctrines that are there. These are the most popular ones.
So in Dvaita philosophy, there is nothing called like moksha, which is like again what I heard on movies or is like essentially the Jivatma being or like assimilating into the Paramatma.
Okay.
Is that not the case with Dvaita philosophy?
In Dvaita philosophy, the Jivatma will reach Paramatma, but just because it reaches doesn't make it the same.
Okay.
So you reach him, but you don't become him.
Okay.
And there's a subtle difference there, right?
Okay.
So that is there. And then there's so many different theories behind it. We covered it in many different aspects of it before, about vasanas. What does vasana means? What does karma mean? And all those things. And we can keep on going back to it again and again. But this is some of the things we discussed last time. Is there anything else we discussed last time from summary perspective? Which was we have the notes, right? So did anything else we covered last time?
The last news that I wrote was like
This is all confusing, man. Don't say anything more.
like that's I think what we were last talking about, like the speed of learning, like when we're saying okay, which yuga is the best year,
Yeah.
and we say Kali Yuga is considered the best year because just you have all the knowledge from past yugas are there. So you learn. It's like earlier yugas you were learning and assimilating and then acting on it. But in Kali Yuga you have so much information already present. So you have the speed of learning is so much faster
Okay.
compared to earlier yugas.
True, but I want to provide some clarification to it. The speed of action, speed of results is much faster in Kali Yuga. Just not about learning. Everything happens much faster in Kali Yuga. So I think we covered this in 2 classes before. If you look at the time scale that we have, what is the first yuga that we have of this Chatur yugas? There's 4 yugas that make up one small segment or cycle. The first yuga is Satya Yuga. Then next is Reta Yuga. Reta Yuga, then Dwapar Yuga, and then Kali Yuga. So how many years make up a Kali Yuga? Memory man. Huh?
173 million.
No.
That is
142,000 years. Okay, that's a lot of years. Then 2 times that is Dwapar Yuga. 3 times that, or 3 times our Kali Yuga is Treta Yuga. 4 times that is Satya Yuga. So for all these 4, when you look at Chatur Yuga, it's 10x of Kali Yuga's time. So again, keep in mind that things move faster in Kali Yuga. Everything moves faster in Kali Yuga. The desire for anything also happens faster in Kali Yuga. So for example, in Satya Yuga, again, this goes back to some of the scriptures of Veda Vyasa, who was answering these questions. He answered 3 questions. I think I might have told the story. So Veda Vyasa, after Mahabharata is over and all those things, he's happily taking a bath in a river, and suddenly a whole bunch of rishis approach him. And they're waiting patiently at the banks of the river. And Veda Vyasa comes out. Before the rishis can ask any question, Veda Vyasa says, woman, Shudra, and Kali Yuga, and keeps walking past them. And rishis were like all the rishis were pretty much perplexed. Like, what was the guys? Can you go faster and quietly, please? The rishis were perplexed. I didn't even ask the question. And what was these mean? And then they said, okay, I knew the questions that you have in your mind. The 3 questions you had in your mind was, who's better, man or woman? Which is the best varna that you have? And third one was, which yuga is the best yuga? So between man and woman, Veda Vyasa has already answered the question that women is better than men. And then of the 4 varnas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sutra, who's the best one? Shudra is the best. He's also answered that question. And third one was, which is the best yuga to be in? And Veda Vyasa's answer was Kali Yuga. So we always say that Kali Yuga is the worst one. We are all in peril. We are all going to die. That is a constant thing. That is not true. That's a very wrong interpretation of things. That was never the interpretation from Vedas. So, so these are the answers that he gave. But we'll not go into that aspect right now because then we'll spend a lot of time talking about it. But in Kali Yuga, to answer Ujjwal's question, in Kali Yuga, things happen faster. And the reason we talked about the expectation is also very high. And the reason we talked about it was we were talking about Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, has been divided into many different interpretations. One such interpretation, one such distinction or characterization make is the first 9 chapters of Bhagavad Gita almost deal with Karma Yoga. The next 9 chapters, pretty much almost, and I say approximation, these are, don't take it too literally. The remaining 9 chapters deal with Bhakti Yoga. The Jnana Yoga is not even mentioned much. And there's a term at the end of it called Sharanagati that is mentioned only in 1 line. And the question is why? Right? Because Sharanagati is even though it's a very simple thing to say, trust in God, it is extremely difficult for us to trust anything. And we talked about a number of examples last time. Trusting is very easily said, but almost impossible for us to do. So Krishna said, you are approaching Kali Yuga, so don't even bother trying it because you will not be good at it. And the other one, he also doesn't mention jnana yoga much because he knows that people don't have the time or the patience or inclinations to truly understand jnana and achieve salvation through jnana. Jnana is knowledge. He said, you follow bhakti yoga, which is very ritualistic. So attaining salvations through practice. That is one way you can do it. That's reasonable for you to do in Kali Yuga. The next reasonable way for you to do it in Kali Yuga is karma yoga, which is basically do your job, but do your job with dispassion. Do your job for the right reasons. Don't do it for selfish motivations. So if I am a sweeper, just sweep the road because that's the best thing to do. Make sure that you're doing the best job so that people around you can be happy and the place can be sanitized. Don't do it because I want my paper to come in the press and the people will give me tips, better tips. That's not the reason we should be doing it because those are selfish reasons. Do it because that's the right thing to do. So that is karma yoga. So that is the context in which we talked about Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is where things become very difficult at the same time easy. Think of it this way: in Satya Yuga, in Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and all those things, we have the concept of Gurukula. A student will have to spend years in front of a teacher to learn something, and that too with the teacher when the teacher is in the right mood and all those things. He'll come in the morning. He has his own daily rituals to worry about and all those things. He'll come and he'll say a few lines, and then if you remember, you remember. If you don't remember, that's your loss. And he'll get up. It's one-on-one coaching center anyway, and all those things. Of course, come to Kali Yuga. The first person to introduce mass class system was, he moved away from one-on-one education and said, okay, we'll do group lessons. Do you know who it is? Ramanuja. Ramanuja was the first one to really advocate group lessons because Ramanuja struggled a lot. He wanted to learn about the importance of the Bhagavad Gita and small slokas in Bhagavad Gita. And he went to Tirukachinambi, that's the name of the teacher, 18 times. He would walk from Srirangam to about 150 kilometers one way. He will walk every day saying that, please, can you teach me today? He will say, no, I'm too busy. He'll walk back. Walk front, walk back. He did that for 18 times. And finally, at the 18th time, he teaches him the importance of Om Namo Narayana and the significance behind it and all those things. Of course, there's a lot of significance behind why he was sent back that many times. There's a very big philosophy behind it, so I'm not going to that one, but story aspect is fun. But after he learns the significance of it, in the city of Melkot, which is where he went from Srirangam to Melkot, apparently, as per the story, I can also tell you this is false. Don't believe that too literally. As per the story, he goes on top of the temple. He calls everybody and says, I'm going to teach you something. I'm going to teach you what I learned from my guru. He told me that I'll go to hell if I tell this to everybody, but I don't mind going to hell. You all can go to heaven. He teaches the significance of Om Namo Narayana to everyone. And that is the story behind it. That is not what happened, though. What he did was, he did not do mass thing, but he offered it, opened up to everybody and said, if you guys want to learn, come, I will teach you. He never sat in a temple and screamed the mantra to everybody. That he never did. But he was the first one to say that we are in Kali Yuga. If I make somebody come to me 18 times, the chances after the second time he's going to quit, he's not going to come. And things will be lost. The knowledge will be lost. I would rather have me go to you or do something so the knowledge continues further. So he's the first one to say, I'm going to teach it to anybody and everybody who comes in. No distinction made. Whether you're qualified or not qualified, I don't care. I'm going to teach it to you. If you want to do something with it, you do it. If you don't want to do something with it, that is your problem. And where Ramanuja is the first one to change that approach, and he did one-to-many education system. Okay, so that is the significance of it. We can jump into this one, but you had a question last time about why Rama killed a Sutra.
I figured it out.
Okay, you figured it out.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the answer?
Failures of future management, as you said.
What's that?
Failures of future management, as you said. It was actually the text was modified But Uttarakhanda, basically not the original Valmiki Ramayana, and that story was added.
Sure. So this is one thing I wanted. So his question last time, this for the significance of everybody else. He had asked me a question last time after the class was over to say that in Ramayana, he had heard of a story where Rama kills a Shudra for for doing prayers and penance or reciting the Vedas. The question is, why did Rama kill a Shudra? Is it not against all the things that we are learning? Just because you're born in a lower caste, does it make you unprivileged to read Vedas? The answer is that is not at all true. Vedas have always been open to everyone. Vedas have been not a privileged document for just a handful of Brahmins. It is open to everyone. Of course, over a period of time, due to some dogmatic personalities and people and all those things, the practice has become different from the principles. It's like the current day politicians who want to hold all the power because they are the power centers. They don't want anybody else to come in. And that is how it is. That has happened over degeneration of our philosophies over time. It's happened. I'm not saying it's not happened, but that is not, it is what it's supposed to be. There are many, many examples of non-Brahmins, very as a generic term, performing ritualistic behavior. Classic example is Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra is not a Brahmin. Valmiki is not a Brahmin. Valmiki is what?
I don't know.
He was a low-class hunter. He was a hunter. He was who had his own tribe. He was a hunter who later on became a robber because he had other goals to achieve. A bandit, you should say, a highway bandit. So Parashuram is a Brahmin. Parashuram is a Brahmin who became a Kshatriya.
Okay.
So it's a very unique. So how many of you know the story of Parashuram and? Okay, this if you go into this, we'll always be in story mode, man. Okay, there is a king called it's not Sagara, Shakara. I think. Hang on, sorry. Give me a minute, because it's important that people remember the names as well, because there's no point. Remembering or telling stories if you don't remember the names. This is when I will find out that I cannot find my own notes. This is where I'm going to struggle to find my own notes. Oh, Gati. So there was a king called Gati. Gati wanted, of course, Gati's wife, whatever the age might be, she sadly wanted to have a baby. And at that time, Gati's daughter was married to a rishi called Richakar. Her name was Satyavati. So Satyavati was married to a rishi called Richakar, very famous rishi, by the way. So just remember these names. So Richakar's name comes in many, many different stories and Puranas too. So Gati approaches Richakar and say, of course, I'm getting old and all those things. So I want my wife wants to have a baby. So can you help me with that? Of course, the checker performs. They say, help me, not that kind of help. Of course, other stories where that kind of help happens, but not this. That's another. So Richecker performs a special yajna, and he comes with two. In this case, the story says it as fruits. Think of it as a potency medicine. So he gets these two fruits. One he gives this to his wife Satyavati. The other one he gives it to Gati's wife, his mother-in-law. Of course, the mother-in-law, like anything, she doesn't suspect the son-in-law. He says, okay, I'm sure this guy gave the better fruit to his own wife, and he gave me the inferior quality fruit. So what this mother-in-law does is go to Satyavati and say, well, let's trade our things. And so of course, daughter doesn't understand the mother's intent, so they exchange the fruits. And they both consume it. Of course, and both of them get pregnant. But as the baby is developing, Richard Christ feels something is not right with the baby that's developing in my wife's womb. Something doesn't feel right. It's not behaving. The characteristics of the baby seems to be more aggressive. Then he asks this question, what happened? Because his wife said, I changed the fruits. He said, why did you do that? I had created the portion in such a way that your mother-in-law was supposed to be a Kshatriya family. They're still in the kingdom, ruling family. So the fruit that was meant to be for a Kshatriya baby. Whereas the fruit that I had developed for you, or portion I developed for you, was meant to be a Brahmin baby. And of course, the wife realizes a mistake. And she says, I'm sorry, but I don't want a Kshatriya baby. And of course, this is where the story goes that Richakar then says, okay, I cannot stop this. But what I can do is I can skip it. I can make the characteristics skip a generation. But this has to come in a lineage. It has to happen. I can't stop it. So what Richakar does is he makes the characteristics skip. So Richakar and Satyavati have a baby called Gautama Rishi. Whereas the father-in-law and the mother-in-law, they have a baby, that's Vishwamitra. So Vishwamitra is a born Kshatriya, but he has a Brahmin tendency. So now Gautama, of course, gets married and all those things. Then Gautama has a baby. That baby is Parashuram. So Parashuram, even though he's born as a Brahmin, has got Kshatriya tendencies. He's very materialistic, very aggressive, and very uh, uh, let's say it's sort of emotional and materialistic in nature. Anyway, so there are instances, many instances to the point that there are Kshatriyas who perform, there are also Shudras who perform Vedas and Vedic penances and everything. In fact, if you look at, I think somebody asked the question about Alvars. I think was it Ujjwal. So we talked about Alvars. Out of the 12 Alvars that are there, only 2 Alvars are Brahmins. Remaining all of them are from very low class people. In fact, there's an Alvar called Pandra Alvar. He was such a low class that he could not even come to the city. So, but he was a very big devotee. And to a point where at one point of time, he wanted to, his only aim in God life was to see the Krishna idol. And he, at one point of time, is praying and singing Pant. So his name is Tirupanalvar. He became Tirupanalvar was his name. But he was singing in the steps of a lake. He does not notice a priest was having bath and walking. And the priest, when he comes, he sees this guy singing, and he takes a stone and hits him in his head and say, how come I'm coming, you are ignoring me and standing in my way? So because of you, I became impure. And the priest now goes to the temple door shuts on him. And the door is not getting opened at all. And that's when he realizes the mistake he makes. He comes out, he apologizes to the Tirupanalvar, carries Tirupanalvar on his shoulder into the temple, and that's when the door opens. And at that time, Tirupanalvar gets to see God, and he ends his life right there. So Tirupanalvar only sang 10 pastorams or 10 songs in his life, and he became an Alvar for just 10 songs. There are people who, Kulashekar Alvar, for example, sang over 1,200 some things. Madhurakavi Alvar is the one who sang the least. He only sang 7. So, Alvars, I think of them uh, as people who are born, who are immersed in divinity, who are here to spread the word, God's words. Think of them as saints, or apostles, the 13 apostles that you had for Christianity. But there's 13 or 12? 12 apostles, 12, not 13. 12 apostles. 13, of course, is Judas. Okay. Okay. Oh, so the thing I was trying to go with the story that he was asking is there are many, many types of stories that you see in current day that are not at all true. First of all, the story of Rama killing a Shudra is not in Valmiki Ramayana at all. It is a story that was added much, much later. So there are the most popular stories that you know nowadays. Of course, we all like the glamorous stories and drama and water cooler conversations, right? But no stories that you hear nowadays are actually not in the original scriptures. These are all made up stories. For example, how many of you have heard of the story where uh, that when Krishna killed Sudarshana, killed Sushupala, the Sudarshan Chakra came back. He cut his fingers. The Draupadi gave him a sari, and that's why he got the sari. She got the sari back with returns. In you heard the story? Not at all true. If Krishna cannot handle those Sudarshan Chakra, then she's no longer. She not be in the business of handling weapons, man. If you can't handle a gun, don't have a gun. If you cannot handle Sudarshan Chakra, don't have a Sudarshan Chakra. He's God. He cannot make those mistakes. So there's no such story happened. And again, other fallacy in the thought process is if you give on tissue to God, then he gives you a notebook, then he's not God, he's a businessman. Okay, next time I'll give one piece of gold, you give me 100 pieces of gold back. Right? So God is not in the business of doing trading with you, barter system. He will give you what you deserve for your bhakti, not for what you gave him. I can't say I gave you one coconut, give me 100 coconuts back. No, that doesn't work that way. That is why in Sanatana Dharma, I've told this many, many times, the concept of prayashchitta. So if you go to any puchari or any astrologer, you'll say, oh, you have this grahan doshan here. So do 100 blouse bits to some lady, you'll get all doshas gone. What will Shani Bhagwan do with 100 jacket pieces, man? What is he going to do? He doesn't even have a wife to give all these pieces. So what is he going to do with all this cloth and all these things? Total waste. In Sanatana Dharma, there's no concept of prayashchitta. The only psychological thing is that it's a way of distracting you from your current problems so that you will have a hope in life. Hope is the biggest virtue. You'll have a hope in life to keep on working through your problems instead of giving up. That's the only psychological benefit you can get. But nothing is going to change because you did something called prayashchitta. That is not in Sanatana Dharma concept at all. Please don't get in those kind of beliefs. Okay. Now, let us read the concept of nature and self. Who wants to start reading it?
Nature of the self, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the nature of the self, which is different from the three bodies, the witness of the three states, and beyond the five sheets? Atma, Tarhikaha, Satchidananda, Swarupa. Then what is the self? It is the nature of the existence, consciousness, bliss. The not self, Anatma, was described in its entirety and is explained how it is not the self, Atma. The three bodies, five sheets, and the three states constitute not the self. The not self. Then what is the self? The nature of the self can be indicated in two ways. Tathastha Lakshana, indicated with respect to the world, and it is the conditioning as the cause of the world, the witness of thoughts, and so on. Swarupa Lakshana, indicated directly as infinite, eternal, and so on. In the following text, the self is indicated by Swarupa Lakshana as existence, consciousness, bliss. Each is now explained. Existence. Sat Him. Kalatraye pi tishtatiti sat. What is existence? That which remains unchanged in the three periods of time, past, present, and future is existence. The past and the future are called so only with respect to the present. The self is present in all the three periods of time. It means that it is always there and will ever be. There was never a time when I was not, and there will never be a time when I will not be there. Birth is coming into existence of a particular name and form, and death is their destruction. Since I never exist, I am birthless, Ajanma, deathless, Amara, beginningless, Anadi, and endless, Ananta. Anything with a name, form, and quality undergoes birth, death, and change. Being birthless, I am timeless, Nitya, changeless, Avikari, nameless, Anami, formless, Nirakara, and attributeless, Nirguna. This objectless existence is of the nature of a pure being. In it, there is no becoming as it is changeless, Nirvikara. Everything exists because of this existence principle, which is the very substratum of the entire universe. It is experienced in the world as the isness of an object, such as the book is, the table is, and so on. It is experienced within I as I am.
Sure, let's stop there for a minute. Okay. Any thoughts or comments on this? So this is actually one of the things that was used by others to talk about the pros and cons of Adi Shankara's philosophy itself. Uh, so if you look at Adi Shankara's philosophy and the reading of Brahma Sutra itself, there are people who, of course, anytime there's a scientific theory proposed, there'll be people who support it, people who oppose it, right? So people who are opposing Adi Shankara's Advaita philosophy concept, they had two major arguments in their favor. The first one is Sach It Anand, right? So Adi Shankara's philosophy is based on what is called as the Nirguna Brahman or Shunya Vakya. So Nirguna is something that has no gunas, no attributes, there's no properties, right? And then you say Satchit Anand. So Sat is happiness, Chit is consciousness, and Anand is blissfulness. So it does attributes, right? So you are giving attributes to God. So giving attributes. So why is that the case? The other piece is we have Brahma Sutra. If the fact is we have entire Brahma Sutra itself means that there's something there. If there's something there, why am I writing even Brahma Sutra as a book? So they're saying that Bodharayana, who is the author for Brahma Sutra, they're saying that Bodharayana itself meant for something to be there, because if there's nothing, then why is he even bothering writing a book? I'm going to write a book about nothing, right? Yes. So the first line of Brahma Sutra is Om Brahma Brahma Jignasa Om. That is the first line of Brahma Sutra itself. So Jignasa means inquiry into Brahman. And then he goes on into inquiry into Brahman in the second line and third line onwards. So if I'm saying I'm going to inquire into Brahman as a first line, then why is he saying that he didn't have to write the remaining 700 verses for nothing? You said, inquire into Brahman, there's nothing there, don't bother, go to the next book. And you close the entire book right there, right? So that itself is a primary argument around it that he had. Then the other, of course, the other one, of course, is around Maya. So I'll keep that for later. But then there are also people who supported Adi Shankara too. So they had other philosophies on it as well. And here, the most important thing I want to stress on is on existence. So we always talk about also Brahman as absolute truth. What is absolute truth? Truth is something that's, you have to keep the difference between there's a truth and a fact. These are not the same thing. It may sound very similar. For example, I can say the wall is cream or whatever it is. It's a fact. But is it a truth? That depends. It's a truth today at this point of time. By next weekend, if I repaint the wall, that is no longer the truth. So the truth is relative and it's accurate at this instant of time. but but what is the truth that stays immaterial of the scale of time? That is called the absolute truth. And they think Brahman is the absolute truth that transcends time. It is whatever it is today is what it will be tomorrow, what it will be a million years from now. It was what it was a million years ago. It didn't change. That is called absolute truth. And that is what is they saying Brahman is. So they didn't say earth is Brahman. Keep in mind, because our ancestors realized that the earth is changing. Earth can exist, earth can be destroyed. So they didn't say earth is absolute truth. In fact, our philosophers did not even say our Trinity, the Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva is Brahman. They didn't say that either. Because they also gave an expiry date for all of these gods also. They said, okay, Brahman is going to die in this time. They are new Brahman after that. Sorry, Brahma, not Brahman, Brahma after that. So they say they did not, they said there's only one absolute truth, that is Brahman. And this is one thing that is true against all, it's common to all three major doctrines. All three major doctrines agreed on only one thing, clearly and equivocally. That is, Brahman is a source of everything that we know today. And how the transformation happened from Brahman to what it is today, that's where subtle differences starts coming in. In Advaita philosophy, there is a superimposition of Maya on top of it, of this, to create the manifestations that we're experiencing today. In case of Advaita, Vishis Advaita philosophy and Advaita philosophy, there's a different ones. We'll talk about that later. But again, I'm getting too much into detail at this point of time, just for you to know that when you read this book, it is not as superficial and easy as you think. It's a very complicated scientific interpretations behind all these things. But again, it's a teaser for people who are interested to go actually explore, and of course, rely on Google, YouTube, whatever it is, and learn more on it too.
So as it stands today, based on our current, not following this book, but is there anything that is absolutely unchanged that we know of?
Yeah, that's what I think at this point of the best closest thing that we can tell it is a unified field, or the field theory. If we believe in quantum physics, or if you just want to call it a space and all those things, that energy medium that is there, the black, they call it dark energy, they call it quantum field, whatever you want to call it, whichever scientific doctrine you believe in.
So it's
That
something like
that is the
all
closest one we can think of
it's
in the
like-
words that we can explain in current days words. So for the science people who are science, how many science? Are you background science? No. No. Okay. For people who do believe in science, of course, in our quantum physics, what happens is the energy, the field, uh, is not static. It's not a static one. It constantly combines and recombines. So a field will break into matter and antimatter. The antimatter and matter will unite to form the field. And that is what happens in the space all the time, constantly. And there are scientific evidences to prove that. This is not just somebody hypothesizing that it happens. It's actually been proven. We've seen it, we have experienced it, it knows. Then what happened when the Big Bang happened was, during the Big Bang, when something exploded, it created billions and billions of matter and antimatter. One in a billion. This is again a scientific number. Don't ask me why is it not 10 billion. They have done some math behind it and say 1 in a billion particle escaped the recoalition of the matter and antimatter. So you almost every particle that formed matter and antimatter recoalesced back into energy. But 1 in a billion particle escaped that reconjugation step. And that 1 in the billion particle that is escaped is what we see as the entire universe, or Milky Way and all those things. So think of it this way. And if, for example, if you take Earth as an example, if you, including all the living organisms and everything in it, if you were to condense it, bring it all together, you know how big that will be? Can you guess? Anybody who sees quantum physics videos? No? Thought
Like,
somebody would.
with reference to what, like, if you're, like, when they talk about under extreme gravity, this could be like a pinpoint.
It's not exactly pinpoint, but close to
I
it.
mean,
But
like when you're talking, yeah, this was the thing that we discussed, right? Like within the atom, there's like 99.999% is just
empty space, yeah.
but when
So,
you
so
collapse it,
because if you collapse the entire Earth into in and take away all the space that is there between that, it becomes less than a small cube of maybe 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, something like that. It's such a small thing. All that we're experiencing, everything is less than that. If you take all the human beings, for example, and condense them together, we'll be less than a sugar cube that you put in a coffee or a tea. So that is all the emptiness that's inside us. Anyway, so existence here, I think of it as something that transcends time. That is all I wanted to convey here. Uh, okay, and let's move on to consciousness.
in Jnana Swarupam. What is consciousness? It is the nature of absolute knowledge. Knowledge of the world is gained as thoughts of the mind. Without thoughts, no knowledge of any object is possible. This is a book. I am hungry. Here I do not understand, and so on are the thoughts of mind. Without me, the thoughts cannot be known. I illumine all my thoughts while remaining different from them. I not only illumine the presence of my thoughts, but also their absence. Thoughts come and go, but I remain unchanging and ever shining. Then who illumines the self? None can illumine the self. It is the subject. The self can never be known as an object of knowledge. And there's no need to illuminate. And it is self-shining. The sun does not need a torch light to illuminate me. I always know that I am. I do not need anyone else to tell me so. Even in the deep sleep state, the mind is not I am, and I know that I am, and I get up saying I slept well. Their self-shining, ever-shining knowledge principle is called chit or consciousness, which is my true nature. One,
Hey, no, no.
yes,
Sorry, before that. So anybody can tell me what chit is? Don't repeat what's there in the book. How to preface that?
that the concept that we talked of is the three states of mind when you're like awake state, dream state, and like whatever deep state, like where the mind and the body are off.
Okay.
And then, but you said that like you still wake up. Like, what is it that wakes you up in the morning, even when you are like really like in the deep sleep?
Yeah, they think that is chit.
Or that is what like that's the closest I can get.
No, that is not chit. Okay. So I think what he's saying is that so there's three states in the previous I think chapter we read about. There is an awake state. There is a
Dream state.
sleeping, or and there's a no, it's awake, sleeping, and dream, or so dream state, and then there is what is that one? Um, come on, uh, deep sleep state. Yeah, deep sleep state. So in the awake state, your body, mind, and intellect, everything is awake. When you are sleeping, your body is resting, whereas your mind is and our intellect is still awake. That's why you have dreams. And then you have a deep sleep state where everything is gone to sleep. So you don't even have to sleep. You don't even have dreams there. You're in total. It's almost like you're in a vegetative coma state, but you're awake. I mean, but you wake up after that, right? So your answer is that chit is what?
Chit is what that guides you to come back.
That is not accurate. So Anybody else wants to try a different answer?
Knowledge of self,
Sorry?
like knowledge of self.
Okay, close enough. Okay, but so when you talk about the instead of the three states, we'll talk about the three ways of looking at ourselves. We have the body, then we have the mind and intellect, and then we have Ishwar or Om. So, for example, the mind and intellect combined together is what is we call as Chit. So when you are in a deep sleep state, the Chit is also sleeping.
Sleeping.
In a deep sleep state. So when you are in the dream state, Chit is awake.
Yeah, but in the deep sleep state, you're saying the conscious is sleeping too.
Your Chit is sleeping.
Actually, said chit is consciousness.
So Chit, what I'm clarifying is Chit is basically your mind and intellect. Your Chit along with Atma is the Atma is the only one that is awake. It never goes to sleep in any of the states. So that is why sometimes in the English classification of body, mind, intellect can be confusing. Whereas in Sanatana Dharma and Vedantic concepts, it's called Achit, Chit, and Ishvara. And that is the three designations they have inside the body, mind, intellect concept. So the consciousness requires you to be aware. There has to be some level. The consciousness by itself means that you're aware of something that's going on. And so for awareness to happen, you have to have a source of input and output that has to be there. The input and output can be effectively operating or not operating. That's a different issue. But there has to be a source of input and output. So such chit in chit here refers to the consciousness that is there. So you have to have a sense, and that if you don't have chit, you will not have the next one anand. Because for you to measure anand and blissfulness, you have to have a way to measure it. How am I going to measure that I'm happy or not?
But you said bliss is not measurable.
Bliss, no, bliss is, I don't say bliss is not measurable. Bliss is different from happiness, and said bliss is an infinite happiness.
That's not measurable.
So the infinite happiness is way you can measure it or way you can talk about it is the incremental change when it happens to it in mathematical term. The delta x is almost negligible, tending to zero, right? So if, for example, if I give you 10 rupees now or $10 because rupees has no value here. If I give you $10 today and I give you $10 more, you doubled your money. You feel happy about it. If I give you $1 million now, and I give $10 more, like I have $1 million, man, your $10 makes no difference to me. If I give you $1 billion and if I give you $10, you won't even bother counting. So same is true with the bliss. Bliss is that state of happiness where there is no incremental happiness that you will sense and measure. It does not mean necessarily infinite. It's such a large level of happiness that any small change will not give you any additional extra happiness. So if you are in a state of bliss and I give you a piece of candy, normally you would have been happy, like, I don't care, man, I'm already very happy, right? That extra candy, extra piece of benefit I'm giving you makes no difference in your level of happiness. And the reason it's very important to say that it's not infinite is because the bliss level can be different for different people, right? It's not always the same number. Some people can attain the bliss at one level, some people attain bliss at a different level, but keep in mind that pursuit of bliss that is always there. That is what motivates our people or sannyasis or rishis to take that on the path, is their pursuit of bliss, not pursuit of happiness. We are in the pursuit of happiness. They are in the pursuit of bliss. Okay, let's keep going.
So what did we say chit is?
Chit is basically a combination of your mind and intellect. Again, we'll come to that concept more because the question is, where is Hankar? Ego. Where does ego reside? We talk about body, mind, intellect. Where does ego reside? How many people agree and how many people disagree?
Intellect, if you have intellect, then you shouldn't have ego. because you can make a choice.
You can consciously make a choice to be egoistic. No, but okay, that's fine. Then where does chittam? What's the difference between chit and chittam? Have you heard about chittam? Chittam is memory. There's a difference between chit and chittam. Memory. Where does memory reside?
Mind, body, I guess. Intellect.
Intellect is the right answer. Because you cannot make the distinction between right and wrong unless you have a data set to compare what is right and what is wrong.
But memory is still a data point, right?
No, memory is just a flow of thoughts.
But how does that relate to right and wrong? He remembers something, not make a judgment on.
Yeah, but your definition of right and wrong is based on relative sense.
But that's a different data point.
No, hang on. So your mind is a flow of thoughts. Anything comes and anything goes. That flow of thoughts is registered in some place. So for example, you can feel a lot of different things, but those things are archived somewhere for you to use. Some of them are registered in very measurable and recollectible fashion. Some of them you don't even remember because you have so many dreams, for example. Most of the dreams you don't even remember. You may remember the next day morning, but then they're gone. If I ask you what did you dream like 20 years ago, you'll be like, I don't know. Right? Because they made no impact on you. On the other hand, there are things that do make an impact. That means that it transferred from being a memory or a flow of thought into something that is into a registered database. All right. So some of them are more permanent. And so this is why it happens, right? It's more even in the physiochemical reaction point of view. When you read something over and over again, what happens is chemically those brain cells and neurons get activated to still the path is made harder and harder. So that's why when you read something over and over again, it stays in your memory for a lot longer. Because now it becomes transcends from being a short-term memory filing to a permanent filing section. And so having said that, every time when you get something, there has an environmental stimulus that happens that helps you classify whether it's right or wrong. So for example, you could see a red light or an orange light or a yellow light and a green light. But your brain has been conditioned through external stimulus to say the red light means stop. Somebody who does not know it will not going to stop automatically. Somebody who does not understand the concept of these traffic lights will just keep driving back. Like, I don't know what this light is, man. It's like a Christmas tree. We keep on growing past it. You will not know to stop. You've been conditioned. Your mind has had the thought of a stimulus of coming a red, green light, yellow light, and red light. But over a period of time, you've been told red light means stop. And now you know that jumping a red light is bad, especially if you're in the United States. In India, you can go do whatever you want. But those are things that have been conditioned behavior. So that conditioning happens because you're comparing your data set of the light to a different data set in your mind, which says what is right and what is wrong. And then your intellect is making a decision on it. So that is what happens in your logic. So it's a very complicated process. So to answer the question, the chittam resides in intellect. Ego, ankar, resides in memory.
That's memory is intellect.
Sorry, my mistake. Mind.
I mean, like what you just explained is like essentially three different substratums, right? Like one is your input source, which is your mind.
Input source is body.
Sorry, one is like, the flow of thoughts is your mind. Then the flow of thoughts will process through your intellect. Eventually, intellect, like, you learn.
Not every thought will go to intellect.
Yeah, but you will learn and you establish like think of it as like a file structure or whatever. You're creating some data points, and then your intellect will kind of implement or like try to stop you by cross-referencing your thought with intellect with the data points.
If it has a reason for it, yes.
Yeah. So don't you think like from these three things, like, there are three different substrata, like, your mind flow of thoughts is one thing, your data points is another thing, and the intellect is another thing. Like,
you can start the for next classification. I'm telling you what Chimyananda did with body, mind, intellect. what his predecessors did was this basically Chit, and Ishvara. So Chinmaya, as he was trying to target a Western audience and non-Vedantic audience, he decided to break the Chit into two, and mind and intellect, so people can understand it in the more colloquial sense. If you want to say that, no, I want to break even the intellect into two, one is called the file structure database, and other is the processing power, you can do it too. That is your philosophy. Nothing wrong in that. That's the thing. Ultimately, it all comes to the same thing. You are going more granular. He's not going that granular. Okay. So let's go into bliss.
Swarupa.
Oh, actually, so let's stop. Let's stop. Sorry, a mistake. We're at 11:20. So we are